Littler, has he caught your eye?
Now, see, we're going to say this now because we had another youngster called Josh Rock that all use press and everything else have absolutely destroyed. So if it ever goes tits up, we'll look, give yourselves a pat on the back because that's the way it's going. Let the boy play darts.
This is what happened when the darts world was given a direct warning about a 16-year-old, ignored it completely, and then watched that warning play out in public, match by match, incident by incident, over the next 2 years. The man who gave the warning was Gary Anderson, two-time world champion, 54 PDC titles, a player who has spent his entire career protecting himself from the exact pressure he was describing. The boy at the centre of it was Luke Littler, and what Anderson said on December 29, 2023 was not subtle. It was not ambiguous. It was one of the clearest warnings a senior professional has ever publicly delivered about the treatment of a young athlete, and the sport responded by doing the precise opposite of everything he recommended. Let's go through exactly what happened. To understand why Anderson said what he said, you need to understand what he witnessed in the days leading up to that press conference. Littler had entered the 2024 PDC World Championship ranked 164th in the world, a 66 to 1 outsider, 16 years old. What he then did to that tournament was extraordinary. He beat Christian Kist in round 1 averaging 106. He beat Andrew Gilding. He beat Matt Campbell. In round 4, he beat Raymond van Barneveld, a 5-time world champion, 4-1. Then Brendan Dolan, 5-1. Then Rob Cross, the 2018 world champion, 6-2 in the semi-final. Each win generated more press, more cameras, more Zoom calls, more Sky interviews, more requests. Anderson was watching all of this from the same tournament, the same backstage corridors, the same players' room. He could see what was building around this kid, and on December 29th, after his own third-round win, he sat down in front of the assembled media and let them have it. His exact words: "We had another youngster called Josh Rock that all you press destroyed. So if it ever goes tits up with Luke, then give yourself a pat on the back. That's the way it's going. Let the boy play darts." Then he got more specific. "I've been downstairs today and he's had cameras, Zoom calls, Sky. Let the boy play darts. He's had a great 2 minutes, he's played well. What happens if it all goes Pete Tong now? Well, you boys have ruined that, haven't you? Let the boy play darts. He's 16 years old and playing well, just like Josh Rock. Fantastic player, but you have knocked him back about 2 to 3 years." And then the question that cuts to the heart of it. You have no idea how many young dart players we see coming through the system with people saying this is going to be the next best thing. Pressure goes on them, all goes Pete Tong, where are they now? Go back the last 10 years. Tell me where all those youngsters are now. That question had a specific answer, and Anderson was pointing at it directly. Josh Rock. And behind Rock, a longer list of young players who had been built up, overexposed, and quietly ground down. Anderson had watched it happen repeatedly. He knew the pattern. He was naming it out loud. What happened next tells you everything about how seriously the darts world took his warning. Within weeks of that press conference, the commercial machinery around Luke Littler accelerated to a pace that would be difficult for an adult at the peak of their career to manage, let alone a 16-year-old from a working-class family in Warrington whose total career earnings before that tournament were approximately £3,386. Let's be precise about what he was handed in the 12 months that followed. He was given a wild card into the 2024 Premier League. 16 consecutive weeks on the road, every Thursday night, a different city, a different crowd, a different camera pointed at his face. He signed a multi-year fashion deal with Boohoo Man. He signed with Xbox. KP Nuts put his face on their product. Tag Heuer came in. The Sidemen made him the face of a cereal brand. He appeared on the Jonathan Ross Show. Alongside Millie Bobby Brown, he went to Old Trafford to parade his runner-up trophy and met Sir Alex Ferguson. He won BBC Young Sports Personality of the Year, the first darts player ever to do so. Google named him the UK's most searched athlete in 2024 and the third most searched person in Britain, behind only the Prime Minister and the King. He became the first darts player to reach 1 million Instagram followers, more than double Van Gerwen's following. Warrington Wolves temporarily renamed their stadium the Luke Littler Stadium. This was all built around a 17-year-old who, in Gary Anderson's own words from November 2024, was very quiet and so laid back. A boy who, Anderson said, had talent through the roof, but whose personality was the opposite of the spectacle being constructed around him. Luke Humphries, the man who actually won the 2024 World Championship. the title Littler reached the final of, later said publicly, "It's no one else's fault than the I. Media's because they're the ones that control it, and if they want to push me they can, but they decided not to, or do it as much." The world champion was invisible. The runner-up was a global celebrity. That tells you everything about what drove the decisions being made. Now here's where the story requires honesty, because the narrative is not simple. Luke Littler was not destroyed. Gary Anderson's most feared outcome, the complete derailing of a young talent, did not happen, because Littler's talent was extraordinary enough, and his nerve was extraordinary enough to survive what was being asked of him. In May 2024, he won the Premier League, becoming the youngest PDC major winner in history at 17 years and 123 days. He won the Belgian Darts Open, the Polish Darts Masters, the Grand Slam of Darts, his first ranking major, beating Martin Lukeman 16-3 in the final, winning 15 consecutive legs in one of the most dominant performances the sport had seen. And on January 3rd, 2025, at 17 years and 347 days old, he beat Michael van Gerwen 7-3 to become the youngest world darts champion in history, hitting a tournament record of 76 maximums and walking away with £500,000 in prize money. The machine had produced results, the commercial bet had paid off, so the people who dismissed Anderson's warning could reasonably say, look at the trophies, look at the titles, look at the world ranking, where's the damage? Here's where. Between July and October 2024, in the middle of the biggest year of his career, Littler suffered 3 consecutive first-round exits in a major tournament. He lost to Michael van Gerwen in the first round of the World Match Play. He lost to Rob Cross in the first round of the World Grand Prix. He lost to Andrew Gilding, the same Andrew Gilding he had beaten at that very first World Championship, in the first round of the European Championship, averaging just 95.39. 3 consecutive first-round major exits, in a player who had reached the World Championship final on debut. No pundit wanted to say it plainly, but those exits were the sound of a teenager running on empty. In December 2024, on the eve of the World Championship he would go on to win, Barry Hearn, the PDC president, pulled Littler aside for a private meeting. He later described it as sending him a warning. His advice: "Listen, you're going to find you've got a lot of friends now, son. You're 17 years old. Don't listen to anybody. Give yourself a chance. Just put the money in the bank and forget about it." That was the institutional response to a teenager showing signs of strain. Put the money in the bank. Not, here is a structured welfare plan. Not, here is a sports psychologist. Not, here are new boundaries around your media commitments. Just, bank the checks and ignore the noise. Gary Anderson had said the same word back in December 2023. He'd said, let the boy play darts. He meant it as protection. Hearn's version meant something different. It meant, the commercial commitments stay, just try not to let them bother you. The behavioral incidents began in early 2025, and they are worth going through in sequence because each one is a data point in the same story Anderson had already told. Premier League Night 3, Dublin, early 2025. Littler lost 6-4 to Gerwin Price in the quarter-final. It was his 5th consecutive defeat to Price. As he left the stage, he threw his darts case on the floor. Berlin, April 2025. The German crowd booed him throughout his Premier League night. He lost to Chris Dobie. He then withdrew from the European Darts Grand Prix in Germany and posted on social media that he would not return to Germany until October. The world champion, 18 years old, publicly announcing which countries he wouldn't visit because the atmosphere had become too hostile. Littler himself had already said the quiet part out loud. I just can't get away from the media. Every game I win, they want to talk to me. I do like it, but it does get a bit too much. A bit too much. Anderson had described him as the calmest person in any building. The boy who would pick up his coat while everyone else ran screaming from a fire. That boy was now throwing darts cases on the floor and withdrawing from international events because the crowds were too loud. The distance between those two descriptions is not nothing. That distance is what Gary Anderson was pointing at. Let's talk about who knew this was coming, because it wasn't only Anderson. Dr. Linda Duffy, a chartered psychologist and former England darts captain, published concerns specifically about Littler and said the PDC must do more to protect players' mental health. Her central question was this: when his performances dip and under the full glare of the media and social media spotlight, what support will be in place? Nobody answered that question. The law firm, Brabner's, published an analysis titled The Adultification of Luke Littler in January 2024. They cited research finding that 75% of surveyed football players confirmed media created additional stress pressures. They raised concerns about national newspapers publishing body-shaming commentary about a 16-year-old. They asked the same question Duffy asked: what protection exists? James Wade, the 2009 Premier League winner, open about his own diagnosis with bipolar disorder and ADHD, had expressed specific concern about the toll of the Premier League roadshow on Littler. 16 weeks, 16 cities, 16 nights in front of crowds who had paid specifically to see him perform. Wade had been honest about what that schedule does to a person. Luke Humphries, the world #1, said in 2025, "It's just too much darts. I'm playing too much. When I'm up on stage, I am just feeling emotionless." Humphries had previously suffered a panic attack on stage mid-match in 2019 and sought cognitive behavioral therapy and hypnotherapy before eventually reaching the top. He was a fully formed adult professional with a support structure when that happened. He still nearly walked away from the sport. What was in place for Littler? The PDPA's connection to Sporting Chance, Tony Adams's mental health charity, which the PDPA chairman acknowledged had a disappointing turnout at mental health seminars, adding that players should hang their heads in shame for not attending. That was the welfare provision. Attend the optional seminars. If you don't, hang your head. Meanwhile, the PDC was building a £20 million 10-year deal for their asset. There's one more thread worth pulling, and it goes back to Josh Rock, the player Anderson specifically invoked as proof of what he was describing. Rock won the PDC World Youth Championship in 2022. He hit a televised 9-darter at the Grand Slam. He was everywhere. The next big thing, he then suffered a shock second round defeat at the 2024 World Championship, and his development stalled significantly. When he was later asked directly about Anderson's comments, Rock's response was, "I probably do agree with what Gary said because we were sitting in the players' room and the camera just panned on you. The camera just panned on you. That's it." That's the whole mechanism Anderson was describing. You're sitting in the players' room, trying to prepare, trying to be a dart player, and the camera finds you. It always finds you. And every time it finds you, there's an expectation attached. A performance, a quote, a reaction, a personality. And you're 16, and you haven't been trained for this. And there's no one whose job it is to make it stop. Anderson had built his armor over decades. His relationship with the spotlight is essentially adversarial. He spent years declining travel, skipping events, snapping at reporters, protecting his energy and his family time with a ferocity that his results ultimately justified. When asked about a Saudi Arabia invitation in January 2026, he answered, "Is it more than an hour in a plane? There's your answer then." He knew what constant exposure costs because he'd paid part of it himself and refused to pay the rest. He was trying to tell the room what was heading toward a 16-year-old boy who had never had the chance to build those walls. So here is where the honest accounting lands. Gary Anderson was right that the media pressure was real. He was right that Josh Rock's development had been damaged by overexposure. He was right that the pattern of hyping young players and burning them out was documented and repeatable. He was right that nobody backstage was making the cameras stop. He was right that a 16-year-old doing Zoom calls and Sky interviews on the afternoon of a World Championship quarter-final was being asked to carry something that would weigh on anyone. He was also, and this is important, wrong about the outcome, being inevitable. Luke Littler won 2 World Championships. He won the Premier League. He won the Grand Slam. He became world #1. His talent was large enough to survive the circumstances the sport created for him. Anderson feared a Josh Rock scenario. What happened was different. Bigger successes, bigger cracks, simultaneously. That complexity doesn't invalidate the warning. It sharpens it, because what Anderson was describing was never really about whether Littler would win titles. It was about what it costs a person to win them under those conditions. And that cost, the darts cases thrown on the floor, the countries avoided, the crowds turned hostile, the "I just couldn't be bothered" admissions, the worst averages of his career produced in front of booing crowds, that cost is visible and documented and real. The sport looked at that cost and called it part of the deal. Anderson looked at it and called it something different. He said, "Let the boy play darts." They didn't listen. And now Luke Littler is 19 years old, the best player on the planet, carrying more baggage than anyone that age should have to carry, in a sport that built its commercial future on his back before he was old enough to fully understand what he was agreeing to. That is what Gary Anderson saw coming. That is what nobody acted on. And that is a story the darts world has not yet fully reckoned with. If this kind of deep dive into what's really happening behind the headlines in professional darts is what you're here for, subscribe and hit the bell. We're not done with this story. And drop your take in the comments. Did the PDC and the media have a duty of care to Littler that they failed? Or is this just the price of success at the highest level? The argument's worth having.